Dr. Jeff talks love. Dr. Jeff talks life. Answers your questions, cuts through the strife. Sex and intimacy, real and true. Evidence-based, made just for you.
Hello, welcome to Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy, the podcast where we explore the science, psychology, and the heart of connection. I'm Dr. Jeff Albaugh, and I'm so glad you're here to grow in your understanding, to deepen intimacy, and to strengthen the relationships that matter the most to you. Today, you're joining us for episode 61, When Love Meets Reality, Acceptance, Change, and the Work of Staying Connected. Whether you're watching live or listening to the recording later, every moment of your amazing life counts. And I count it a true blessing and a gift to have you here joining us to improve your life. I sincerely thank you for taking time out of your busy life to be with us. Thank you. You're why this podcast exists. We're connected across so many platforms. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on LinkedIn. If you're joining from X, you may want to submit a question. So hop over to YouTube, hop over to LinkedIn, Facebook, StreamYard, any of those places you can submit your question. If you're a Facebook person, please follow us. The more people that follow us, the more we can do on Facebook. Visit the website. Wow, there are now, there's 60 episodes. There's all kinds of things in there that you can watch. Amazing expert guests. And you can pull up the calendar and see all the exciting things we have coming up for you. We're booked all the way through the middle of June now, and we've got some wonderful expert guests. So go to the website. You can take Dr. Jeff wherever you're going now. Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy can work out with you. We can go on the road trips with you. We are streaming wherever you want to be, on iHeartRadio, on Amazon Music, on Spotify. We're there wherever you are, so take us along. As always, I like to remind you that everyone is welcome here in this space. Whatever your sexual orientation, whatever your gender identity, or your relationship style, you're welcome here. This space was created for you. The mission of the podcast is pretty simple. It's just to empower and enlighten you with the evidence-based, that's the scientific-based information you need to improve your sexual health and to deepen your loving relationships so that you can live your one miraculous life wholeheartedly and more full of love and understanding. So this evening, in relationships, we often find ourselves caught between two powerful desires. I don't know about you, but these two powerful desires, the wish for our partner to change, maybe to be something different that we think would be better, and the longing to feel accepted exactly as we are, authentically. When conflict becomes repetitive, when differences feel like immovable, couples can start to believe that something is fundamentally wrong with their relationship. But what if the path forward isn't choosing between acceptance or change, but learning how to hold both these important concepts? So today, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Andrew Christensen, one of the most influential couple therapists of our time and co-developer of Integrative Behavioral Couple Therapy. We're going to explore how acceptance can actually soften defensiveness and create space for meaningful change, how polarization develops in relationships, and what couples do when they feel stuck in painful cycles. This is a conversation about compassion, flexibility, and the courage it takes to love someone just exactly as they are, while still growing together. Dr. Andrew Christensen is a distinguished professor of psychology at the University of California, Los Angeles, and he is an internationally recognized leader in couple therapy research and practice. I personally trained with him over a decade ago out in Long Beach, California, and it was a wonderful experience. He is best known as the co-developer of Integrative Behavioral Couple Therapy, IBCT. And empirically, that means a scientifically supported approach that blends emotional acceptance with strategic change interventions. Over the course of his career, Dr. Christensen has conducted groundbreaking research on marital distress, on couple conflict, and long-term relationship outcomes, including large clinical trials comparing different therapeutic approaches. His work has helped reshape how clinicians understand chronic relationship struggles, not as signs of incompatibility, but as patterns that can be softened through empathy, emotional acceptance, and intentional change. Intentional change. A respected teacher, researcher, and clinician, Dr. Christensen contributions have profoundly influenced modern couples therapy, for sure. Certainly in my practice, and I know in a lot of practices across the country. And they continue to guide therapists and couples around the world. So I am so honored and excited to introduce you to a mentor and a brilliant researcher and clinician, Dr. Andrew Christensen. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jeff. Appreciate it. I'm afraid I won't be able to live up to that wonderful introduction, but I will do my best.
Well, that is all true. I know it to be true myself. And I've certainly enjoyed your books and had my patients read your book as well. So I think you've got some wonderful things out there. But I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and it's all you. It's all yours. Let's hear what you got to tell our audience.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am very happy to be here. And I'm going to present a little bit of information about the topic that Dr. Jeff talked about there, about acceptance and change and how we work on that in couple therapy. You know, most people, myself included, would love to be accepted by my partner as I am. But of course, I have a number of things I would love to change about her. So all of us are for acceptance and change, but sometimes we want the acceptance for ourselves, the change for our partners. And of course, you can imagine if both people take that approach, that it can lead to some conflict. But without further ado, let me share my screen with you, and let's see if Jeff just confirmed that everybody has seen me and the slides here. Is that correct?
Yes, we can see them beautifully. Everything looks perfect. You are ready to roll.
All right. Okay. Thank you. I just needed a little validation that I wasn't just looking at my slides myself and talking to myself. I can certainly do that, but I was hoping here to talk to all of you. So when love meets reality, acceptance, change, and the work of staying connected. At some point in a relationship, no matter how wonderful it is, what a wonderful match it was, at some point, each of you are probably going to experience something on the range of, I love my partner, but if she would only do that or not do that. Or I don't understand why she keeps doing this thing, and I told her I don't like it, or him that I don't like it, or it bothers me, but she keeps still doing it. I don't do this to him or her. Why does she keep doing this to me? So those are the kind of experiences or statements partners will say or think to themselves, because no matter how wonderfully carefully you selected your partner, how wonderful a connection it was, it's inevitable that there are going to be some issues that come up between the two of you. Now, we'll get into this a little bit later, but sometimes the issues that come up are the downside of something that attracted you to your partner in the first place. And so that makes it a little even more complicated to create change in relationship. But at some point, each of us wants to create change as well as acceptance. But let's take a look at change first. We can think of two separate mechanisms of change, of how change comes about. And one way is what I would call deliberate change, or what sometimes in the field is called rule-governed behavior. It's the should, the ought tos, the try tos, the work ats. It's change that comes about because someone instructs us. This is the way to do it, gives us directions, teaches us how and what to do. And so it's a major source of change. When I learn how to play tennis, or I learn how to do something new on my computer, it's because I'm reading directions or reading instructions, or someone's teaching me how to do that. Now, if I have a teacher helping me do this, then they may reinforce the behavior, or I may get reinforced for it by, hey, if I do this, the computer works, or if I do this, the ball goes over the net really well. Now, the problem with deliberate change is emotions and motives aren't congruent with that change. And what I mean by that is, we basically probably all know that we should exercise daily. We should eat a diet that is primarily plant-based and doesn't have all these ultra-processed foods in them, or has lots of fruits and vegetables. And yet, boy, it's hard to exercise. When you get up in the morning and you'd rather lie in bed a little bit longer. Or, if there's a tempting dish of ice cream or some dessert, that it would certainly be nice to eat that rather than these vegetables here. So even though we may know what is the right way to behave, sometimes our motives and our emotions are not congruent with that. So that's that's one of the problems in bringing about change in a deliberate way. And it's why we often say in psychology, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. Sometimes it's hard to bring about a deliberate change in yourself, personality-wise, behavior-wise. And so what you have done in the past is a good predictor of what you're going to do in the future. Now, a second mechanism of change is what we'll call evocative change, or something people sometimes call contingency-shaped behavior. But it's the want-tos, the feel-likes, the naturally want to do that, the feel-good doing that. I feel good doing that. You bring about it by eliciting behavior, and often the reinforcers are intrinsic. And so what do I mean? What are examples of this? If I see my wife and she looks really nice and I want to give her a hug, or I'm really proud of her and I give her a genuine compliment. That's evocative behavior, a change. It's evoked in me. I feel like being physically affectionate with her, or I feel like complimenting her, or she's telling me something that's really interesting, and I'm just totally focused on what she's saying. Now, the problem is, in this kind of change, what are the conditions that influence the behavior? Because in couples, sometimes partners want the other to be more interested in them and be more interested in what they're doing, or want them to be more excited or engaged and excited about having sex with them, or be more attracted to them, or be more physically affectionate with them. And maybe they want that when the other person does not feel that way. And so one of the difficulties with deliberate change in close relationships is that the change we sometimes want, the most important change we want in our partners, is a change in the emotion or attitude that they exude for us. And that's not so easy to change in the same way that if my partner wants me to, clean up the dishes, I can do that. I may not want to do it, but I can clean up the dishes even if I'm not have an evocative sense of I'd really love to clean the dishes tonight. So those are two mechanisms of change. And here's some cartoon examples. Sure, I could tell you what I want you to say, but then you just say it because I told you to say it, so it wouldn't count. If people are just going through the motions in a close relationship, then the other one often feels it just doesn't count. Here's a therapist saying, if you want to save your marriage, tell each other you're sorry. And they both say, you're sorry. Of course, that's not exactly what the therapist meant there. But it's again, this notion of giving people an instruction to do something sometimes doesn't work out very well. Now, let me go to the other key part. We've talked about change, and now let's talk about acceptance. So, and relate it to change. So traditional by change, what we traditionally mean by change is modification of the agent or, in quotes, perpetrator of an action. So if I want my partner to be more affectionate, then I want her to increase the frequency or intensity or duration of affection. If I want her to be less critical, I want her to reduce the frequency or intensity or duration of criticism. So that would be traditional change. Now, acceptance, and really I should have said emotional acceptance, is the modification of the recipient or quote unquote victim. And it's a change in emotional reactivity, so that rather than me being upset by the level of affection that my wife expresses for me, I'm not so emotionally hurt by that, or emotionally accepting of that, or I don't take the criticism as personally. That's a change in my emotional reactivity. And so they're both changes, but there are important differences in the change. One we call change typically, and the other we call emotional acceptance. And as Dr. Jeff indicated, both are part of a healthy and constructive relationship. Give me coffee to change the things that I can, and wine to accept those that I cannot. Now, I'm not promoting, I want to clarify, I'm not promoting alcohol abuse or even alcohol use, but I just love this play on the old, what is it, prayer, where acceptance and change, and using common substances to increase the likelihood of those. I'm not asking you to change your spots. I'm just asking you to take out the garbage. And so you can be accepting of the person's spots, but still want them to make some changes in their behavior. Now, integrative behavioral couple therapy, and I'm just going to try to give you an introduction to that tonight, consists of these principles. We try to bring about emotional acceptance and behavior change primarily through evocative or contingency-shaped strategies of change. We rely secondarily on deliberate change strategies. So we use both, but we emphasize evocative strategies of change. And how do we do that? We first identify a core issue or issues, 2 or most 3 core issues that the couple struggles with. And then we develop a guiding formulation of the issue or issues, and we call this the deep analysis. And it provides a shared understanding of the problem and points toward what can be accepted and changed. And let me go over that deep analysis right now. So I'll use as an example a common relationship problem of trust. Okay, the deep analysis, the deep is an acronym, but it's also meant to imply that we're not doing a shallow analysis, we're doing a more substantive, quote unquote, deep analysis. But the deep is the acronym that refers to differences or incompatibilities. That's the D. And so, as I mentioned earlier, no matter how carefully you select your partner, you're going to find someone who's different from you in some respect. And it's a difference that makes a difference. It's not something that you can, he likes pizza, he likes pepperoni pizza, but I like veggie pizza. That's not a difference that makes a difference. But a difference that makes a difference is what will inevitably come up. And now sometimes they're related to the things that attracted us to our partner. Maybe we were attracted to a partner because they were very sociable. And we'll use a Jack and Jill example here based on the little nursery rhyme. Let's say that Jack was attracted to Jill because she was very social. She's very charming. She knows how to handle herself in a social situation. And Jack was always more shy, more retiring. And so Jill was a great partner for him. And Jill found Jack a great partner for her because he certainly didn't try to compete with her in a social situation. He would let her, be in the limelight, and he was fine being kind of a little back in the shadow. And so that was one of the things that attracted them to each other, among other things. But now let's look at emotional reactions and sensitivities or vulnerabilities. Let's say that Jack came from a family where the mom cheated on the dad, or maybe his parents were fine, but he had a couple of girlfriends and they cheated on him. And so he's very sensitive to being cheated on. Trust is a big issue for him because he hasn't felt he could trust his partner in the past. So that's his one emotional sensitivity of his. And on Jill's side, let's say Jill, because she's been this very active out there kind of person, she's had some experiences of where her maybe family were kind of constraining her, putting limits on her. She had some boyfriends who always wanted to kind of control her, she felt. And so she's very sensitive to being limited or controlled or someone forcing boundaries on her, things like that. And now let's take a look at the external circumstances, typically external stressors. But in Jack and Jill's case, Jill has a very good job, but it requires a lot of social contact, with men her similar age, and many of them, interesting or attractive men. And she has to travel sometimes. And so that is a circumstance that ties into Jack's concern about her. Can he really trust her, when she's having luncheons and dinners with these people, often men who she works with. And so you can see some of the contributors to the trust issue that they have. The difference in their social skills and social abilities and social comfort, the emotional sensitivities they have, Jack's sensitivity about cheating, Jill's sensitivity about being controlled, the external circumstances that make, that legitimately make, cheating or some approximation of that more likely. And then Jack and Jill get into this pattern of communication where Jack feels anxious about Jill. And so he interrogates her, or what she feels is interrogation. He's just asking questions to try to find out what she did and what she didn't do and who was there and how long was she with them. And Jill doesn't like these 20 questions, and so she stops sharing as much on her own with Jack. But the more she stops sharing, the more Jack gets concerned and starts questioning. So his question starts being more like interrogation. And then he starts checking up on her, maybe texting her, when she's at an event, just to check up on her, or looking over her credit card bill or things like that. And so they've gotten into a pattern of interaction where the more she doesn't share, the more pursuing and anxious and interrogating he becomes, and the more interrogating and pushy he becomes about, and the more he kind of, from her point of view, invades her territory, the more she puts up boundaries and doesn't want to share with him. And so they're in a vicious cycle of communication around this issue of trust in their relationship. And the impact, they may polarize. They're more polarized. The more he tries to hold her back from having the meetings that she feels she needs to have or wants to have, the more she puts down her foot and insists on going to these meetings. Both feel hopeless and helpless to have an impact on this problem between them. And then they either become adversaries or strangers vis-a-vis this problem. Adversaries means they get into arguments about it all the time, or they become strangers. They don't talk about it because they never get anywhere when they talk about it, but they certainly think about it, and they become distant from each other because of this particular problem. So that's what we mean by a deep analysis. And what it shows, and what we do with couples is we present this deep analysis, and then it guides our treatment, because the differences in emotional reactions are not things that typically can change very easily or dramatically. That's where acceptance comes in. Jill is always going to be more sociable than Jack. Jack will probably always have some sensitivity about cheating, or Jill some sensitivity about being restrained or controlled. Now, that doesn't mean that can't change, but it's not going to change suddenly. The external circumstances can be changed sometimes, but sometimes that's creates even more stress. Jill changed her job. But what can be changed is the pattern of communication. So they can be more likely to work together with this difficult problem, and they don't become either adversaries, always fighting about it, or strangers, not even talking about it, even though it's a big problem for them. So that's what we're trying to do in IBCT. This is the book for couples. This is a book for therapists. This is the whole book about how to do IBCT. Here's the book for couples, Reconcilable Differences. That's kind of the couple version of IBCT that's can be helpful for you and your partner to read if you're interested. But we also, what I want to talk about now is our online program, ourrelationship.com, which is an online program based on integrative behavioral couple therapy, the approach I developed with a colleague. And it has a lot of evidence in support of it. Major clinical trials with low-income couples, with a representative sample of the U.S. population. But let me briefly describe it. It's 8 to 10 hours of content completed over 4 to 6 weeks, and it can be done self-directed, totally on your own, or with 5 coach calls. These are coaches, trained people who are supervised by psychologists who kind of help you at key points in the program. There are programs for heterosexual, LGBTQ plus couples, low-income couples. There's an individual program. It's available in English and Spanish. It can be done on your smartphone, your tablet, your computer. The structure is there are three phases of it that capture the our relationship. Our is a acronym. So the O refers to observe. In the first phase, they identify a relationship problem. They get feedback about their relationship based on some questionnaires that they get that are scored based on good normative data. Then in the understand phase, the program takes them through a deep analysis of their relationship issue. And finally, in the respond phase, it helps them establish a concrete plan for moving forward. Now, in each of these phases, each partner works individually, and then at the end of the phase, they meet together with their partner and share with each other what they've learned. And this is where the coach can come in, or where they can do it on their own. So a lot of the program is done individually, but then there are these three key points when they come together and share. As you can see, those points for the coach calls. So you can see a few examples of the experience on a smartphone. There are lots of videos a number of videos that you see of couples having issues, and you kind of see what their pattern of communication is. You can see Jose and Carmen's pattern of communication in that one there. And there are three primary models for its use. It can be as a supplement to individual therapy when relationship issues arise, but couple therapy isn't necessary or possible, the partner's not willing to attend. Before couple therapy, as a homework during couple therapy, as you would use our self-help book, or in lieu of couple therapy. We've shown that people improve their relationship with this approach, and then some of them don't need couple therapy. So that's a little quick and dirty overview of integrated behavioral couple therapy and of the Our Relationship program. I showed you the therapist manual, the self-help book. The online program is at ourrelationship.com. So one word, Our Relationship. And that's meant to be, it's not about my relationship or about your relationship, it's about our relationship. So if you want to take a look at the program, it's at ourrelationship.com. And the IBCT website is ibct.org. There's some demonstrations of tapes of IBCT at through the American Psychological Association. So that's my little quick and dirty overview of IBCT. I'm going to stop sharing now. And come back to you, Jeff. Dr. Jeff.
Awesome. Gosh, such good information. And yes, so now listeners have an idea of what we kind of look at and how important some of those things are. And when you pull apart some of the deep analysis, the differences and how those differences make the couple clash, those buttons, those emotional sensitivities that we all have our buttons, right? And it's kind of like, okay, let's understand.
Absolutely.
What are your buttons? I always tell people,
it's through life without having a button, right?
Everybody's got a button. So that's your emotional sensitivities. And then external pressures, things outside of the relationship that cause problems, like, maybe a in-law or a money or, something that is putting pressure, school or work or something. And then so important, that pattern of communication, that rut that they've fallen into, where they feel like they can't even talk to each other anymore without it being a major a major outburst or whatever. And what I find, and I know you probably do in your practice too, so now these couples are they're polarized, they're kind of in their corners, and so they're living these parallel lives, which can be heartbreaking for people because you live with this person that you truly love or have loved, and you don't really have a relationship anymore with that person.
Right. Or it's an adversarial relationship.
Yes. That too. And you find sometimes when the couples come in and it's a good place to go into couple therapy earlier on rather than later in that process where you've already got one foot out the door and you're like, I just thought we'd try couple therapy to see if that'll help. We really want you to come in when you're like, we really need help figuring out how to move forward in a better way. But oftentimes they're in that adversarial thing where I've honestly seen, and I'm sure you have too, their lives become about making each other's lives unhappy and miserable.
Right. Yeah, in a constant cycle of recrimination. I'm angry at you for what you did, so I'll do something that then you'll get angry at me, and then you'll get back at me, and right.
And that tit for tat type of mentality never works in a relationship and really causes a lot of problems. So I really think that it's so helpful to look at those things that are within the deep analysis. And I think it can be really helpful. And so then, especially in terms of acceptance, what we tend to do is work on something we call empathetic joining, really helping you understand this person you fell in love with, that you love so deeply. Understanding why they're doing what they're doing, what their motivations are, what's behind the different behaviors and things, so that you have a chance to accept this authentic, wonderful person that you've fallen in love with, that we're all flawed and broken. I always say, I teach this and my wife will attest to how badly I mess a lot of it up sometimes.
No, we only get imperfect partners to have a relationship with. That's the only kind that are out there. Now, obviously, some are more imperfect than others, but we're all imperfect, and so we're all going to fail a little bit.
And we always have things we can work on. And so often what I find is just really helping people work on their communication patterns. And it's hard to break out of those patterns. I find in therapy, we'll be working on communication and they fall right back into that old pattern over and over. And I'll remind them, remember, that pattern is not, how's that pattern working for you? It's not. That's why you're here. And even though it feels awkward to restate and do all these things that I'm giving you tools to do with communication, science says they work. And once you do them enough, they stop feeling awkward.
True.
So I think there's a lot of different things that can be really helpful. Communication is a really key thing. And so a lot of people, I think the deliverer of that message is just as important as the listener. So we work on both sides. How do you deliver the message that you really want your partner to understand in a succinct, really loving way without a lot of you, and a little more of I feel this and I'm experiencing. So we teach some of that. And then we also work around, how do you really actively listen? Because if you're going to have to restate what they said, you better be listening.
Absolutely true.
So lots of different things. Well, we have a couple questions that came in. The first one is, my spouse and I are dealing with long-standing differences like mismatched desire, parenting styles, and emotional expressiveness, things we see all the time in our clinics, right? How do we determine what is workable versus what may require more fundamental change?
Okay. I mean, we can't answer that in the abstract. When people ask me a question like that, I always say you can only discover that by if both of you make an effort to improve your relationship, and doing that with a couple therapist or or even with some kind of self-help kind of thing. If you actively try to improve your relationship with both of you taking the position that it's not just you that's the problem, it's also me. It's always a dyad. It's always two people. And that's one of the probably most fundamental positions to take, that it's always a dyad. And Jeff, I'm sure you know this, even when one partner seems, the worst one or the bad guy, often we see a pattern called the demand withdrawal behavior, where one partner is more vocal and demanding. The other partner is more withdrawing. The withdrawer may seem like less of the problem than the demander, but it's a cycle between the two of them. And if you see that it's always I like to say it's always a duet, never a solo. And that if you kind of take that position and both of you try to work on it, then I think you'll experience, are things improving or are they not improving? That's the way you determine whether things can improve, by trying to improve them. You have to give them the empirical test.
That's for sure. You can't do it until you try. And I think you bring up there's two words that I'd pull out of what you said that I think are so important. The first is both of you believing that there are true, equally valid, real realities, not just yours, but your partner's too. And valid in valuing your partner's different way of thinking about it and looking at it, that it's not wrong, it's just different. And that there can be two equal realities, and both of you willing to put both of your full selves into this process and work on it. And the other word I like you use is actively. I even tell my patients, I say, my couples, I say, now, I know it's tempting to go out there and say, we did couple therapy, but you didn't get through the assessment part of couple therapy. So you shouldn't go out there and tell folks that you did couple therapy. And I also tell them too, unless you both came really engaged and worked on it, you haven't really done couple therapy. Couple therapy requires two people inherently, and it requires active engagement and involvement on both sides.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more.
Don't you think, Dr. Christensen, that you can feel a certain energy in the room when change is possible and inevitable, and a whole different energy and feeling when they're not ready for that change and they're locked in their position, in their gridlock, and they'll say, we really want to work on this, I really want to change, and you can just feel in the room, that's not where we are yet, but we'll keep working.
Right. And what's really wonderful is when this is the joy of doing couple therapy, when in the room you feel things happening, when people are genuinely communicating with each other, when they show some understanding of each other, and they feel a kind of empathy for each other. That really is powerful to observe as well, and be a part of, kind of, as a therapist, right?
That shift is palpable in the room. It literally is. And it's such a wonderful thing, and for us too, it's almost like this big sigh of relief for everybody in the room, knowing we're in a place of really understanding, of grace and mercy, really giving people what they need rather than what you might believe they deserve,
Right.
It's pretty exciting. So I totally agree. So great advice. And yes, I think that's it. Getting in there and working on it. Whether you work on it by yourselves, and you saw there are apps and programs out there and things like what Dr. Christensen developed now, or work with a therapist. All that can be possible. What will help you the most? Figure that out. Our next question is, for couples who feel stuck after years of conflict, I thought this was a great question. What gives you hope as a therapist? And then the second part of the question is, what have you seen in your research or clinical work that reassures you that change is still possible? I thought those were great questions.
No, those are great questions. I'll tell you what gives me the research that gives me hope is that we in our major clinical trial of couple therapy, we try to get only the most difficult couples. And so the criteria was that you were dissatisfied on some standard measures of dissatisfaction, but over time, not just, after a big argument, you were dissatisfied and called to be in the program, but that you showed that it was consistently dissatisfied in the relationship. And we actually eliminated about 100 couples from our study because we said they weren't distressed enough. That was a funny message to give to couples. You wanted to be in this study, but you're not sick enough, or you're not distressed enough. And then we followed them up, being good researchers, and literally half of those sought couple therapy in the community. So they were still very unhappy enough to go and pay in the community for this. But anyway, with this sample of what we call moderate to severely distressed couples, we worked with them in using integrative behavioral couple therapy, and after about an average of 25 sessions over the course of 6 to 8 months, the great majority of couples improved, and more importantly, they maintained that improvement over 2 year follow-up. Now, over 5 year follow-up, there was some drop off, but they didn't have any additional treatment from us. So sometimes it may be helpful, and I do this in my practice, and I'm sure you do too, Dr. Jeff, is that when sometimes couples come back for a tune-up or a couple of sessions, they've kind of not doing as well as they were doing after the initial phase of treatment, and that's welcome. And we have some evidence that that would be helpful. But so that's the research that gives me hope, and then what also gives me hope is just the experience of doing couple therapy. That sometimes I think, oh my goodness, why did someone refer this couple to me? And then I'm able to make progress with them. And then other times, I think this is going to be easy peasy couple, and it turns out to be much more challenging. But I've certainly had the experience, not that everybody is able to improve or willing to improve, but certainly that even couples who seem very, very unhappy and very stuck, that it's possible to get them to a better place. Not to, perfect happiness, nobody ever gets there, not to problems all gone away, but to a much better place than they were when they came in.
I agree wholeheartedly. I like earlier how on your side you talked about how they feel hopeless and helpless.
Exactly.
And so I think what gives us hope is when we see them begin to see the fruits of their labors, that they do the work, and then it starts changing. It starts evolving into the beautiful thing that it can be instead of the unhappy, often miserable thing that it may have been.
Exactly.
Um, and
Yeah.
so I think about one couple that I worked with, and both of them they had lived really traumatic lives where through their childhood, they had a lot of trauma and ultimately just felt like they were worthless and useless and just nothing. You know the type of people I'm talking about. And again, if you looked at it from the outside, he was more bravado, and so you'd think, well, wow, he's the bad guy. But she was very passive aggressive and knew how to dig in and get her knife in the wound too. And where we empathetically had them join was knowing you both end up in the same place, feeling like a piece of garbage, like you felt your whole life from these things. And your intention on the other side may have not have been that, but the end result, whether it was the passive aggressive or the blatant negativity, is the same.
Right.
You feel the same, and you both know how horrible that feels. And they really dug in with their own therapist, which I think can be so helpful along with our couple therapy.
Absolutely.
And it's so exciting to see a couple like that turn the corner, and you're like, gosh, you kind of don't need me anymore, and this is really good. Maybe we'll do a tune-up in a month or two, but you're really doing well. So that's what I know gives me hope. I've seen people come through some horrific, hard losses and trauma and events, and with work, absolutely able to turn things around. So I would say that's what gives me hope as well. Well, we could talk all evening about all of this because there's so much good stuff to say and so much good things to share. But what I'm going to do is go to a little bit of a centering exercise to kind of get people back into their bodies, and I'll be back with you in just a minute. So as we do in this podcast, before we close the episode, I'd like to guide you through a brief centering exercise. If you're able, place both feet on the floor and allow your shoulders to gently drop and relax. Take a slow breath in through your nose and a deep, Steady breath out through your mouth. In your nose and out your mouth. Bring to mind one difference between you and your partner that has felt challenging. Breathe in through your nose. Exhale through your mouth. Notice what happens in your body. Keep breathing as you bring to mind that difference with your partner that's been challenging. What's happening in your body as you think about that? Don't judge yourself. Just feel what you're feeling in your body. Now silently say, this is something that is hard for us. Take another breath. Now gently add, my partner is human. I am human. We both carry histories, sensitivities, and needs. My partner is human. I am human. We both carry histories, sensitivities, and needs. Keep breathing in the nose, out the mouth. Notice if even a small amount of softening occurs as you exhale and breathe through this. Now reflect on this. What part of this difference might be something to understand more deeply? Not to judge, but to understand more deeply. And what small, loving change on my part might move things 1 degree in a healthier direction? What small, loving change on my part might move things in a 1 degree into a healthier direction? Take one final slow breath in, your nose, exhale through your mouth. Acceptance does not mean resignation, and change does not require force. Growth in relationship often begins with softening, with understanding, and one small, intentional step. Well, before we come back to our guest, Vic, can you show us what's next? What's happening next week on Dr. Jeff Talks About Sex and Intimacy?
Sexual intimacy does not exist in isolation. When couples struggle sexually, the causes are often emotional and relational. In this episode, Dr. Jeff is joined by therapist Claire Postel. They discuss what true intimacy looks like in long-term relationships.
Claire explains that intimacy is multidimensional. It includes emotional, physical, sexual, intellectual, and relational connection.
They explore common patterns that reduce desire over time. Even well-meaning behaviors can weaken a rotten connection.
Join us on March 10th at 7 p.m. Central Time to learn more.
It's going to be a great episode. But today was definitely a good episode, and I can't thank you enough. I know you have a busy schedule and a busy life with your family as well, but thank you for taking time out of that busy schedule to help our couples have more help and more hope, which is what you provided this evening for us. So thank you. Whenever you're watching, I hope that fulfills your needs. Now, Dr. Christensen, before we leave, any final word you'd like to say to our listeners?
I would like to say that there is help and hope out there. There's, of course, couple therapy, but I also would say, since couple therapy can be expensive or difficult, there's also self-help out there. I would refer you to our book, Reconcilable Differences, or particularly to our program that has gone through lots of research, supported by the federal government for the last 15 years, ourrelationship.com. So there's hope for you. Please take advantage of it.
Awesome. Listener, know that your true, authentic, beautiful self is worthy of love and belonging. You are so worthy of that. And that's our wish and hope and prayer for you, is that you find that in your relationships, that you're willing to make those changes, that you're willing to understand your partner so that you can deepen your relationship further. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye.
As Dr. Jeff talks about sex.